During our trip, we'll also be visiting the Houses of Parliament and number 10 Downing Street. Effectively, certainly in Britain at least, very indicative of anything to do with politics. Were we in America, of course, we'd have to go and visit the White House, a similar symbol of power and control. And I don't say that lightly. I really mean that that's what it is. It's a visual symbolism. That's why the buildings are so grandiose and so wonderful architecture. It's not just that it looks nice and it can be a tourist attraction for people to visit. No, it's far more than that. It's a deep unconscious or subconscious, call it what you will, psychological level, that it's a very imposing and visual imagery of power and control, which is what it ultimately represents. You know, the idea of the Houses of Parliament is that there are elected people in there and they're fighting their constituents, their local people who voted for them's corner. And, you know, to some degree, there are people like that in the Houses of Parliament. There are. They're not all bad, certainly not to begin with. And some of them never become bad. So I just want to make that clear. I'm not tarring everybody with the same brush. Unfortunately, ultimately, those people with good intentions do tend to, the vast majority of the time, end up getting overruled by people that higher up, people with more control, people with more power, people behind the scenes. If you like, the people in the Houses of Parliament, when you study and look deep into the stuff we've looked at, ultimately do, generally speaking, what they're told to do. It's a pantomime, it's a puppet show. There's people pulling their strings behind the scenes. People such as Rupert Murdoch, the media mogul. And if you doubt the validity of that statement, please just do some research and notice the odd coincidence, you may say, that he's backed every winning horse, so to speak, every winning Prime Minister in England for decades and decades, every winning party, because he's influenced the mass media that he owns to influence the mass populace, you and me, the people on the street, to be brainwashed through propaganda stories, or as he likes to call it, news items in his publications, on his radio shows, on his television shows, because he's one of a handful of people who own the world media and therefore can influence what you're seeing, what you feel and what you think. So that ultimately you do get influenced into voting a certain way unless you truly keep control of your own mind and explore and investigate multiple different avenues of information, which is easier to do these days than it used to be. But don't take it for granted that tapping something into Google and looking it up's enough, because obviously big companies like Google have agendas as well. You need to be looking specifically for alternative information sites as well as the mainstream media. So yeah, it's odd when you look the number of times that Rupert Murdoch has had meetings with prime ministers in private that eventually leak out. And if you just search a phrase like Rupert Murdoch's private meetings with Theresa May, or Rupert Murdoch's private meetings with Tony Blair, or the name of any British prime minister in recent decades, you'll see that he's regularly having secret meetings. And coincidentally, certain things happen. For example, after a secret meeting with Rupert Murdoch in America while she was out there, Theresa May, who was Prime Minister at the time and is, as we record this, in 2019, but that could change any moment. But it doesn't matter. I'm sure it'll be somebody else that Rupert Murdoch's got control of that gets in at number 10. He had a meeting with her in America when she was briefly over there, and very shortly afterwards, lo and behold, what happened? Part 2 of the Leveson inquiry got scrapped. Now, in truth, it had already been laid out in the Tory party, the Conservative Party's election manifesto, that were they to get in, they were minded to scrap Part 2 of the Leveson inquiry, which Sir Brian Leveson, who held Part 1, said was needed more than ever. Now, you can find reports on the internet that the media secretary Culture and Media and Sports Secretary at the time, Matt Hancock, said that Sir Brian Leveson had said Part 2 wasn't required. He blatantly lied in Parliament. And you can check this out by going to my website, circusofthemind.net, and on that page is a link to the letter from Brian Leveson to Parliament explaining what his position was after the investigation into whether Part 2 of the Leveson inquiry should take place. And his recommendation was that it should indeed take place. Just some things didn't need to be explored anymore because they'd been dealt with by criminal proceedings where various people had been jailed for certain illegal activities. But that some new things should be added. In other words, he said that the scope of the inquiry should be widened. Not shut down, it should be widened. And in particular, he made mention that a new breed of criminality had come to light in the media, given the jailing of Rupert Murdoch's former fake sheikh, Mazza Mahmood, who worked for the now defunct and shut down News of the World newspaper, and then later for the Sun on Sunday. Sir Brian Leveson, who was running the Leveson inquiry, said that it should be widened, Part 2 should take place, and Mazza Mahmood should be a particular area of interest. Well, unfortunately, it got scrapped. And the reason it got scrapped, as you'll see at circusofthemind.net, is that were it to take place, it would uncover the evidence that I published on my blog, circusofthemind.net, the evidence that's creeping out in alternative media, some of it in mainstream media, but obviously not in Murdoch publications, and it would very clearly show corrupt, illegal activity and links between the media and high-ranking police officials and high-ranking individuals in various other apparently squeaky clean organisations. And once this became widespread public knowledge, the public would kick up a massive stink. They would realise, finally no doubt, a lot more of them, what a pack of lies they've been led to believe through print media, through the radio, through so-called television news, or as I prefer to call it, propaganda and lies, because that is generally more what it is. So yeah, the Houses of Parliament are effectively Murdoch's puppets. Not just Murdoch, there's also a few other media moguls that influence power within, but they all have one big agenda of power, control, on what's in their interest to make the most money. A little area to look at, for example, is the fact that Rupert Murdoch has a financial interest, shares in a oil mining company, Golan Mines, in Syria, along with the Rothschilds and other very rich families. And interestingly, it's no wonder that his newspapers will print things in a fashion that makes it more publicly palatable that, governments try to say that they need to go in and use force in places like Syria. Because he will print stuff that helps the governments, and the governments will help legislate and make things become law that will help the media, hence bringing in, or trying to, as they are doing, subsidies for newspapers in England so that they get money off the government because less and less print media is selling. Scrapping the Leveson inquiry, which would uncover police corruption with politicians. It will probably likely end up with high-ranking police officers getting jailed for illegal activities, politicians getting jailed for illegal activities, as well as a whole bunch of media moguls and journalists getting jailed for illegal activities. So they're all covering each other's backs, which is also another reason. The Houses of Parliament, you could almost think of it as a frontline brainwashing defence system, and it works two ways. The media help protect the politicians, and the politicians help protect the media, but the media are also linked in, the media moguls, your likes of Murdoch, with those rich families that run the world, the banking people and the so-called Illuminati. So if they want something to become law to make it easier for themselves, they'll have a word with their mate, Rupert, or one of the other media moguls, or then have a word with a politician who they probably hold compromat on. Because, you know, when a politician upsets the media or upsets one of these powerful people, suddenly out the cupboard, almost instantly, comes these photographs or these confessions that prove that they've been having an affair or that they're homosexual when they claim to be, you know, a straight family man. Something comes out to embarrass them, discredit them, and ruin their career. And investigation shows that what media do is they get this information, they keep hold of it, and it's in German it's called compromat, we call it blackmail material, so that they can put pressure on politicians, people in the Houses of Parliament, to do their bidding, to do what they want. There is the other element of reason why we'll be visiting the Houses of Parliament and number 10 Downing Street, and that's the very simple fact that it's all an illusion. If there was anything that truly our vote mattered about, they wouldn't let us vote on it in the first place. But by giving us this apparent choice of voting, do you want to vote for them or them or them, it gives people the illusion that they've got some level of say or control in it. The truth is that whoever gets in will ultimately end up getting influenced and controlled by the fact that they will get, probably, in this example, blackmailed with compromat material that's gathered on them to do the bidding of the media mogul or the powerful people pulling the strings higher up even further than that. You know, a prime example of it doesn't really matter who gets in. Have you ever thought, if you look at people in other countries can do this online, have you ever wondered how it is that at Prime Minister's question time and in Parliament, where they apparently ask a question from one side, suddenly the other person stands up at the other side to answer this apparently impromptu question, and you can see them reading from a script in front of them, the answer to the question. Are they psychic? Did they write down the answer in advance because they're psychic and they knew it had come up? Or maybe, have they spoke in advance? Is there an element of it's all a charade? Is there a rule in place that means that important questions on certain issues have to have been submitted in advance? In any event, it's not as clear-cut as it seems. There is an element of charade. Brexit is a fine example. If you look at another section of our documentary forthcoming and the web series about the Peterloo massacre in Manchester that brought in a thing called the Six Acts, then again, they create, it's divide and conquer. By creating apparent different political parties with different opinions and different views, what it does is it harnesses people's underlying unconscious belief systems based on the environment they were brought up in. So some people are what some people may term as racist, but they'd swear blind they're not, because to them it was normal, the environment they were brought up with. Other people think the direct opposite. And what politics does is it harnesses through different parties people to latch onto those differences more, make them feel that what they're saying is right because there's a party of people saying it's right who are perceived authority figures and respectable, namely politicians. So it makes it acceptable to have those belief systems and stuff. So they heighten their beliefs and maximise them, making it less likely for that individual to wake up to the fact that what they're doing is dividing and conquering and setting people against each other. Because that's why people get so angry about Brexit, leave and remain, or when it comes to elections, I'm voting Conservative or I'm voting Labour Party. You know, one thing that all parties have got in common, well, some may argue not all of them, but majority of them at their heart, when they're not being corrupted or compromat used against them, is that ultimately they want, and don't laugh too much, generally speaking, most of the people involved want a better world for people to live in. Unfortunately, for some parties and some politicians, the better world they want is purely for themselves, and they have very little thought about the mass populace. And I hate to say it, but at the moment, that's what in May 2019, as we record this bit for the web series, that's what the Conservatives look like, cutting funding for disabled people, the number of people who've died because they've had their benefits cut, the number of people who've been told that they're fit for work, and yet they've got weeks to live with terminal illnesses. It's a complete and utter farce if you look at what's going on at the minute. But it's all right for them because they're sitting in clover, and it's all right for the people in their sphere. And about saying their sphere, because although they do let one or two commoners, and I do say that with a tongue-in-cheek sarcasm, into the Houses of Parliament. Generally speaking, and certainly in the Houses of Lords, you look, the people in key positions, the main power, who have long-term longevity and control things to a degree, tend to come from your places like Cambridge and Oxford and Eton and the good old boys' schools, and obviously the similar type of thing from a female perspective. So it's a bit too coincidental. It's like, well, they are. Some people have referred to Eton and Cambridge and Oxford in the past as a breeding ground for politicians and those people who are going to be, in the positions of control. But when you look even deeper and deeper and deeper into it, quite often, not all the people, obviously, and even the ones that are can be quite distantly related, but there's quite often a lot of people who are related. This happens more so in America when you look at the people who end up being presidents of the United States of America. Do your research and you see so many of them are related to each other, or at the very least related to the same families and bloodlines, of which there are 13 main ones, 13 families and roughly 300 bloodlines that people like David Icke and other conspiracy researchers have identified, and these 13 worth investigating. It's worth looking, do your Google research, find out for yourself, don't take my word for it. But you're talking about the Astor family, the Bundy, B-U-N-D-Y, Collins, C-O-L-L-I-N-S, DuPont, D-U-P-O-N-T, Freeman, F-R-E-E-M-A-N, number 6 is Kennedy, number 7 is Lee, L-I, Lie, number 8 is Onassis, O-N-A-S-S-I-S, number 9 is the Reynolds, R-E-Y-N-O-L-D-S, number 10 is the Rockefellers, number 11 the Rothschilds, number 12 the Russell family, R-U-S-S-E-L-L, and number 13 the Van, I can never pronounce this, Duyn. It's V-A-N, Van, the first word, and then D-U-Y-N, the surname. 13 families, also interlinked to 300 bloodlines, but all vaguely related. Do your research, and they sit in the positions of power in the world's biggest companies, in politics, in banking, in all the things that ultimately are the infrastructure of the planet and control what we as the mass populace are allowed to do. And yes, I did say allowed to do, because they can influence power upon politicians to pass new laws to alter what we are allowed to do or what we're not allowed to do. So it's all an illusion of choice. It's divide and conquer. It's to set people against each other. While they're arguing and in some form of war or conflict, this is a political war, then they're distracted from what's going on behind the scenes. All this madness about Brexit, for example, in 2019 in England, whilst that's been going on, if you look behind the scenes, they've been passing acts of statute law, Parliament, to take away more and more of our freedoms, or to sell off more and more assets of the NHS and other things. But people haven't been reporting this in the media, and they've not been looking at it because they've been distracted, divided and conquered by all this rowing on social media or madness of, is it going to happen, isn't it going to happen? It's done on purpose. It's planned out. It is a pantomime. It's a puppet show. The people with the strings and the power are the media moguls, the bankers, those 13 families, the 300 bloodlines. This trickles down to them pulling the strings through compromat, through the media, through power control, giving people jobs as advisors in companies. Politicians get advisory roles, and then they're earning a fortune from that. They get used to living that lifestyle, and then they're threatened with it being pulled away from them unless they do this favour or do this thing. It's a corrupt system. How corrupt is it? Well, look, worldwide you can see the corruption. It's a bit more obvious with America. I mean, we're only going to mention things like Kennedy assassination and things to know that when you look deep, MK Ultra, Mind Control Ultra was definitely involved. I'm not saying that they actually mind controlled somebody to commit the assassination, but I do believe they mind controlled somebody to look like they'd done the assassination. I don't believe it was the bullet from their gun that did it, but they ended up being mind controlled into doing what they thought was an assassination, albeit they made sure nothing went wrong by doing it themselves, and this person becomes a fall guy or a patsy and gets the blame for it. And why would you want to get rid of certain presidents? Well, if that president wants to get rid of the banking system the way it was known and make it more honest, so that people benefit as a mass populace, then obviously that's not in the interest of the bankers and the powerful bloodlines and families that control the world. So you're suddenly going to disappear, or you're going to get discredited somehow. And you look through history and this happens time and time again. And they do protect things to a shockingly, or there's too many coincidences happen, shall I say, that seem to suggest that people in power will protect others in power to a shockingly disgusting level. Example, Theresa May, the British Prime Minister in 2019, used to be the Secretary of State. I think that's right. Home Secretary, I forget what it's called. Secretary. Anyway, she was in charge of legal cases and stuff, okay? Under her control, she lost hundreds of files. They've gone missing, just can't find them, relating to the Westminster MPs and political sexual abuse investigation. Hundreds of files have disappeared. Evidence gone, vanished. How strange. It defies comprehension to think that hundreds of files could just disappear, and how odd it is that those files could have implicated politicians and high-ranking people. But they just disappear. It's corruption. If it's in their interest, it'll happen. Some things happen that appear to be in the public's interest, and every now and again, I suppose they've got to give you a carrot. That's why at budget times they'll often, go, oh, good news, we've frozen the tax on this, or good news, we're giving poor families a little bit more, or we're widening your tax allowance, so you keep more of your pay that you've earned for. Of course you bloody should. The fact is, for every pound you earn, or every dollar you earn, or every euro you earn, the vast majority of that gets paid back in taxes. People who smoke, the majority of it that you're paying for is taxes to governments. Certainly in England, obviously I know different countries, not quite there yet. When you're buying alcohol in England, you are paying taxes. Again, in other countries, taxes are at different levels, but you're paying VAT or sales tax. VAT in England, sales tax in America. You're paying taxes out here and there that are hidden. Taxes on your house, in England called council tax, rates in other countries. They've all got different names for one reason, to make you less likely to realise that you work most people work 40 hours a week, 40 weeks of the year for at least for 40 years of their life, and then retire on 40% of the money they could hardly afford to live on in the first place, being a good little workaround for the powers that be, because that's what they're supposed to do, because they never realise they're capable of so much more. And when you look and wake up to the fact that it's corrupt, the powers that be, the 13 families, the 300 bloodlines that link together, that then filter down and control the media, that therefore then get them to do things that control the people that are our puppets in the governmental positions, that in actual fact we have a voice as society if we all band together. Rather than getting divided and conquered and arguing against each other, work off one thing: treat one another the way you'd want to be treated yourself. Give more love rather than negativity. Focus on the bigger thing, which is we want basically the best for ourselves and our kids and our loved ones. We want as comfortable a life as possible, and all these things there's enough wealth in this world that were it shared out equally, everyone would be a millionaire. Unfortunately, studies have shown, and everyday evidence shows, that very quickly 95% of that money will make its way back to the 5% who've got the family links, who are in positions of control, who know how to work the system. Because the other 95% of people are blinded to the divide and conquer, are blinded to the propaganda that creates fear, false evidence against reality, creates disorientation and confusion in the mind, which therefore puts them in a state of theta, which is hypnosis, which makes them more suggestible. Thus they end up believing the rubbish they're being fed and think that they're not worthy, think that they don't have a chance beyond that illusion that's being fed to them, and therefore they don't do anything about it. But when you wake up and go, hang on a minute, it doesn't have to be this way, explore alternative media resources, explore information from different sources, make up your own informed research decisions on things, and you'll soon see that all that glitters is not gold, and that the truth will start to leak out, and you'll start to realise you've been lied to for far too long. And these people in positions of authority and power that you're supposed to be able to trust, you can trust one thing: they're doing what's in their interest, or what's in the interest of the people above them, the media moguls or the bankers or the people who truly run the world, not what's in your interest. For what's in your interest, we need to band together as society in a peaceful rebellion, peaceful being the key word because there are laws there, but peaceful rebellion, and work together positively, proactively and constructively to make people realise that they can reprogram their personal laptop computer, they can achieve more than they're being told, and that things don't have to be the way that illusion of power has made you think they have to be for so many years.